Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. As part of a comprehensive news analysis, today we'll be discussing 5 important topics out of the Hindu newspaper, daily edition. Before we begin, some announcements for you. As you know, we are on Telegram, so you can download the Telegram app via the QR code given here or the link given in the description below. Other than that, we have some offline workshops for you. You can first attempt the mock test and thereafter meet our faculty for your preparation itself. We have one in Bangalore, thereafter in Pune, in Kolkata, and in Jaipur. And if you're in any of these cities, I would encourage you to go take the mock test and then meet our faculty and interact with regards to your preparation or any other doubt which you have. Further, we have a weekly current affairs session, explained session at 8 p.m. today by Harshmeet sir on election symbols. So I hope you don't miss this session by Harshmeet sir on election symbols. It's going to be an interesting topic and I hope that you will join us on YouTube for that. Hereafter, let's start our analysis for today, which starts with ISRO and the new generation launch vehicle which has been in the news. Now this term becomes important for the prelims examination generally. For GS paper 3, because it's science and tech, it becomes equally important. So what we are trying to understand here in this topic is that the ISRO already has a whole generation of launch vehicles from the PSLV to the GSLV Mark III. However, now ISRO is trying to introduce a new generation of launch vehicles which also has a reusable component to it, which is something which SpaceX is already using and the other American companies are innovating on. So what ISRO is technically trying to introduce is a launch vehicle which has the cost efficiency of the ISRO itself, and over and above that has the reusable technology which is being used by SpaceX as of right now. So the chairman has pointed out that we are now moving towards a new generation of launch vehicles, and we'll try to understand. We'll first revise what are the launch vehicles, what is the concept, and then we'll look at the basic requirements and what they're trying to innovate into it. So the Indian Space Research Organization, the ISRO, is developing a next generation launch vehicle, the NGLV, which will one day replace the PSLV, which is the workhorse of the ISRO as of right now. In the NGLV, the ISRO is looking for cost efficiency, 3-stage reusable heavy lift vehicle with a payload capacity of 10 tons to the geostationary transfer orbit. To the GTO, they want to send satellites via this launch vehicle itself. Now, when we talk about the different generations of rockets of ISRO itself, we have the SLV, the ASLV, the PSLV, the GSLV, and the GSLV Mark III. So what are the major difference between them? So the SLV and the ASLV are nothing but all solid small rockets. We've already discussed the SLVs, if you remember, which are based on the Rohini sounding rockets in that regard. And the major workhorse of the ISRO as of right now is the PSLV, which is solid liquid 4-stage, can take up to 1860 kgs of payload to the GTO, and over and above that it is mostly used to put any satellite in the sun synchronous orbit. So as you know, a satellite can go either via the equator, which will be GTO, and thereafter what is called a geostationary orbit. And when it is sun synchronous, the satellite goes like this from pole to pole. When it moves, it is technically sun synchronous. When it is moving to equator, it is called geostationary or geostationary transfer orbit. And this is the major difference between these orbits. When we talk about the GSLV and GSLV Mark III, both have a cryogenic part, but the payload capacity is different. This is solid liquid cryogenic and this is also solid liquid cryogenic, but this one uses the C20 cryogenic engine. This uses the C25, which is indigenous cryogenic engine at this point of time, and it can take 2200 kgs. This can take 4000 kgs to again transfer orbit or geosynchronous transfer orbit. So the plethora of rockets we have right now is quite diverse, from all solid liquid to solid liquid cryogenic. The basic point is what the ISRO is trying to replace is the PSLV, and what they want is a new generation of launch vehicles which can also be as cost effective as the PSLV, but could have some component which is reusable, and this reusability is something which has been now embraced by ISRO at this point of time. So I hope that you generally understand the generations of rockets, so that this is the static portion which we are trying to understand here. So once you understand this, that we have the GSLV, the PSLV, the concept of sun synchronous and geostationary transfer orbit, now we can move on what the NGLV is being actually developed for. So the NGLV will be a semi-cryogenic propulsion for booster stages, which is cheaper and efficient. And this is the basic point. They want semi-cryogenic because it is cheap and efficient. It will also feature a simple, robust design that allows bulk manufacturing, modularity in systems, subsystems, and minimal turnaround time so that you can launch as quickly as possible. Potential uses would be launching communication satellites, deep space missions, human space flight, and cargo missions. And the most important aspect is that within this major component, they want a reusable component, either the first stage or the second stage, which would come back and be used for further missions. We believe that at least 10 tons capacity should be the basic target for the GTO, and for the low Earth orbit, which is less than 800 kilometers, it should be twice of that. And the payload capacity, however, will obviously become a little lower when the rocket is reusable, and that is a trade-off in that regard. So when we talk about the ISRO is looking towards the future. It is trying to bring in the reusability of rockets, which is quite common today with SpaceX, and bring in the cost efficiency of India itself. Whilst we are the foremost and the cheapest at this point of time in launching payloads and satellites into any orbit, we would like to go a step further and bring in an aspect that we could reuse our rockets and not technically lose them in the process of flight. So what is this topic? We have tried to understand first the concept NGLV, new generation launch vehicle. We've understood the different generations of launch vehicles of the ISRO itself, and now we are moving towards a new horizon, a new generation of rockets which would be reused. But to do this, the first most important aspect is that we also need to develop a business model for the NGLV. At the end of the day, all these rockets are made for commercial usage, so it should have a commercial satellite component. National missions should also be integrated into these launches, and with ISRO's knowledge and industry support, we could do this. One important aspect which the chairman pointed out and emphasized on, that Indian industries need to come and work with ISRO to develop such kind of a NGLV, and that is the future of space flight in India. So this topic very easy, but it gives an opportunity to understand the different generations of rocket. The NGLV word itself becomes important for prelims examination, so keep it in your mind. And over and above that, the future is reusable and we have to develop it. Now let's move to the second topic, which is stubble burning and pellet units. This is again a very important topic. We previously did the graded response action plan, and this is one of the core issues with regards to Delhi's pollution, which is stubble burning. Stubble burning is something which is seen as a major issue when it comes to October, November, December period. Once the crop is harvested, there is stubble left in the field, and rather than using weeding machines or any other machine to remove the stubble, what the farmers choose to do is, which is much more cost effective, is to burn the stubble in the field itself. But what happens is that if Haryana and Punjab are going to do this on a regular basis and at the quantum at which they are actually producing the crop, it leads to a major plume of smoke which then moves because of upper air circulation towards Delhi and becomes one of the major reasons for suffocating Delhi itself. Now this issue from time to time has been picked up by the Central Pollution Control Board, and finally they've been able to develop a new solution to this. Previously it was buying the stubble from the farmer. There have been different types of solutions which have been developed, but this one looks more promising and is much more realistic in that regard. And the concept is that stubble should be acquired from the farmers, made into pellets, which means that they would technically be put into a machine which would reduce them down to pellets, and then torrefaction would happen. Torrefaction is when you remove the moisture out of the biomass and improve the combustibility of any biomass. So basically pelletization and torrefaction are two processes which can actually make stubble into a small pellet which could be then mixed with coal to be used in thermal power plants. And this is the basic point here, that we could use this stubble because at the end of the day it burns. Why not use it in thermal power plants to generate electricity rather than wasting it in the field itself? So what the center has actually proposed is that they will now allow and help different companies develop these pellet plants and torrefaction plants. They will give capital support in initial development, and therefore could lead to a major breakthrough in Delhi's pollution saga. So with winter approaching and instances of stubble burning in Punjab and Haryana rising, the Union Environment Ministry has announced a 50 crore scheme on Thursday to incentivize industrialists and entrepreneurs to set up paddy straw pelletization and torrefaction plants, and any unit which will be set up after Thursday would be eligible for government funding in the form of capital to technically develop this. But let's try to understand the quantum of this issue, which has been pointed out in the article itself. Every year, about 27 million tons of paddy straw is generated in Punjab and Haryana. The problem is that about 75%, which is 20 million tons, is from non-basmati rice that cannot be fed to cattle because of its high silica content. About 11 million tons can be managed in the field, and the rest is usually burnt, which adds to air pollution crisis in Delhi. So they have no other option but to burn it. This way the fertility of the soil is also restored and they get a cost-effective solution. Now, what is pelletization? This is the two basic concepts which are being applied at this point of time to develop this, which is pelletization and torrefaction. Pelletization is carried out to produce pellets that are the densified form of compost or other mixtures simplified for handling, transport and storage. So it's nothing but making all the stubble into small pellets, which is a densified form of the stubble itself, which can then be used in different mixtures, and more than that, it is simple to use, handle, transport. But what is torrefaction? Torrefaction is the thermal pre-treatment process that improves the physical properties and chemical composition of biomass for recycling. And basically, in the concept of stubble, it is about removing the moisture. It's the pre-treatment which is done to the stubble pellet so that it becomes better for combustion. And what the basic plan is that, and with an estimated cost of a regular pelletization plant close to 35 lakh, which can produce 1 ton per hour in that regard, under the scheme, the center will fund a plant up to 70 lakh rupees, and a pelletization plant will be then also supported by a torrefaction plant. So a torrefaction plant is much more expensive, which is 70 lakh rupees, and under the scheme you can get close to 70 lakh rupees for the establishment of a torrefaction plant also. So you can get total funding of 1.4 crores with 70 lakhs for a pelletization plant and 70 lakhs for a torrefaction plant. But torrefaction is much more expensive than pelletization. Pelletization plant is mostly 35 lakh rupees, while torrefaction mostly comes at 70 lakh rupees, but the capital cost will be covered by the government, and that is the basic point. You can get 1.4 crore rupees from the government for the capital investment into the pelletization and torrefaction plant, and this is seen as the major solution for Delhi's pollution. So what is the larger scheme? What is the larger concept which we are trying to apply here? The concept is that paddy straw made into pellets and torrefied can be mixed with coal in thermal power plants. This would save coal and at the same point of time reduce the carbon emissions that would have otherwise been emitted if burnt in the fields, and this is a regular practice which is there in Punjab and Haryana. As I said, the basic concept is use a plant to produce pellets, then torrefy them and then send them to thermal power plants. The basic point is that this is a one-time only scheme, and regular pellet plants would be then eligible for 40 crores out of the overall pie, which is this major grant of 50 crores. The basic point of this article is that it's extremely important for your examination, because from time to time questions can come that what is the solution to Delhi's pollution, and now we have two new solutions, which is pelletization and torrefaction. So what did we learn in this topic? We first understood what is the concept of pelletization and torrefaction. We understood the quantum of it, which is that close to 75% of the stubble cannot be used in the farms itself. Therefore, we need to find a solution for that, and the solution is pelletize them, torrefact, and then send it to the thermal power plants. So it's an interesting topic, again important for environment GS paper 3. So I hope that the first two topics, both related to GS paper 3, are totally clear. First, which is the NGLV concept, the concept of a new generation launch vehicle, and now the concept of stubble burning and the concept of torrefaction and pelletization. Let's move to the third topic, which is the Interpol's General Assembly meeting. Now this topic is generally a static topic, but because it is in the news, it becomes important for us to understand what is the Interpol, what is the concept of the notices, and why is it an important organization for world crime itself. So the General Assembly meeting is going to happen on 18th October for 4 days in Delhi, and this is only the second time we are hosting it since 1997, where 195 members will be coming to Delhi for the conference itself. So it's a very important moment for India itself, because Interpol General Assembly meeting is happening in India. Now, the Interpol, International Police in that sense, is a very important pan-world organization in which all the police organizations of the world coordinate with each other, so that if a criminal has evaded a national police, he or she can then be prosecuted elsewhere and could be brought back to the country of origin. So what we are going to try to understand is, what is the Interpol, what is the structure it works through, thereafter its notices, which is an important aspect with regards to prelims, and then move on to what is the agenda for this conference. So if you look at the basic question, what is the Interpol? It was set up in 1923, important for PCS level examinations. It is a secure information sharing platform that facilitates criminal investigation of police forces across the globe through collection, dissemination of information received from various police forces. So it's all the police forces coming together and sharing information as a central repository, so that criminals cannot evade national police. How does the Interpol work then? It works through a president, which is elected at the General Assembly, which is going to happen in Delhi, and he comes from one of the member nations and holds office for 4 years. More than that, the day-to-day activity is then overseen by a full-time Secretary General elected by the General Assembly again for 5 years. So these are two very important elections which happen in the General Assembly. Therefore, it becomes important generally for us to understand why this meeting is so important. Now, what is more relevant for your examination are the notices. So the Interpol notices can be asked. You can be asked match the following or generally any question. So let's try to understand this. The article specifically points out towards the red notice, but let's understand all the notices. Red notice is technically wanted persons. He's a person, he or she, who is wanted in one of the member nations, and if a red notice person is caught at any of the airports or any of these countries, they have to send him or her back to the country of origin. Then you have the yellow notice, which is for a missing person, which is that he has been missing in the country of origin. Is he there in any other country? Then you have blue notice, which is additional information. There's a person who is of interest, maybe a yellow notice person, but we need more information about that person, so a blue notice will be then issued. Black notice is there's an unidentified body. It could be a foreign national in a foreign country. Now the Interpol will send it to the larger body, and people will check the repositories for the unidentified body. Green notice is generally warnings and intelligence. This is more common. This is the day-to-day activity, which is all forms of different terrorist activities or criminals moving around. Orange notice is for a person who is an imminent threat. He could have already entered the country and now he becomes an orange notice person. A purple notice is about modus operandi, that how and why is that person operating in that country. So what is the operating procedure of that person? The modus operandi, purple notice. This can also be applied for the police, which is that why is a international police, for example Delhi police or Indian police, operating in China or in Singapore. That notice could be issued, that what is the modus operandi of that police officer or the police force in that country. So this is a much generic one. And the Interpol UN Security Council special notice is the highest of all notices, because groups and individuals subject to UNSC sanctions are then put into the Interpol database under the Interpol UN Security Council special notice. So international terrorists go under this category of the Interpol. So this is something which is relevant for your examination. Do remember it. You can take a screenshot if you want to. Thereafter, what the article points out is, what is the red notice? It is a structured communication issued by Interpol to all members notifying the names of persons against whom an arrest warrant is pending in a particular country. The notice issued requests all member nations that if the named individuals is located in their country, an immediate communication should be sent to the nation that wants him for criminal investigation. So this is the most important when it comes to non-UNSC offenders, but red and the orange notice are the two most important ones. Green notice is something which is actually circulated on a day-to-day basis and is something very common with regards to Interpol. Now that we understand the basic understanding of the Interpol, what is it, and the notices, we can understand the agenda for the meeting. What does the Delhi meeting hold? And this is something for a way forward answer if a question comes on the Interpol. The entire global police leadership will be sitting in Delhi, and that's an honor for India itself. Smuggling of arms, as of right now, drugs continue to be a area of worry for everybody. The session is also expected to throw up a few tricky questions with regards to protection given to the deviants by the establishment itself in some regions of the world on grounds of dubious economic and sovereign considerations. And this technically is a question with regards to, for example, Vijay Mallya, who's sitting in the UK with the comfort and the protection of the UK police itself. So, what have we done till this point? We've understood first the NGLV, thereafter the pelletization process, and now the Interpol. The first topic was easy. It's about a new generation of launch vehicles, the concept of reusability being brought in. Second topic is about stubble burning, Delhi pollution, pelletization and torrefaction, two new techniques introduced to somehow find a solution for stubble burning. And third, which is the concept of the Interpol, India will be hosting a very important General Assembly for the second time after 1997, and it's an important moment because questions related to money launderers, deviants being protected by international police itself is an issue, and more than that, these notices become very important for us, and we need to keep that in our mind. The Interpol itself is an important organization, and India needs to be also an important and active partner in it. So with this, let's enter the third topic, which is related to the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme or Act. It used to be A. So NREGA, or now Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. What this article tries to point out is a very important thing. So we had a report which was titled Employment Guarantee During COVID-19, the role of MG NREGA in the year after 2020 lockdown, and it was conducted by the Center for Sustainable Employment, Azim Premji University, Collaborative Research and Dissemination CORD, Samaj Pragati Sahyog, and the NREGA consortium itself. And what it has pointed out is very, very important. Before we go into the article itself, let's try to understand the basic finding. The first finding is that during the lockdown, NREGA was a major failure. Why? Because 39% of people who were seeking any form of employment, which is average 77 days employment, were not able to find such employment. But after the lockdown, people have been able to recover 20 to 80% of their income loss, which was incurred during the lockdown. So during the lockdown, the NREGA didn't work. However, after the lockdown, it has become the principal means to recover income which was lost during the lockdown. So it's an interesting finding because for the first time we have empirical evidence with regards to the impact of the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that has revealed that wages earned under the act help people compensate 20% to 80% of their income loss incurred during the lockdown. So after the lockdown, it became a savior. People were able to revive back their income. However, the other flip side is that during the lockdown, it was not working in the intended way. So the study was aimed to determine the extent to which working in the program provided income support to vulnerable households during the pandemic. The team surveyed a total of 8 blocks in 4 states: Bihar, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and MP. The final report of the survey that was conducted in December 2021 said, and it's a very important point, for households who had not worked in the pre-COVID year but did find work during the COVID year, the NREGA earning compensated for anywhere between 20 to 100% of income lost from other sources. It is after the lockdown was taken away that MNREGA became a very important concept for income recovery. This is an important point because this means that till today people have been supporting themselves and have been coming out of the COVID shock via the NREGA scheme. But the flip side of the story is that it also pointed out that MG NREGA was unable to meet with the actual demand from the ground. So when it was about giving employment on the ground to the people during the lockdown or just after the lockdown, it was not there. However, over a period of time, it has now become the principal means of recovering income. So across the 8 blocks, on an average, 39% of households did not get a single day's work. This means that 2 out of 5 households that needed work in the COVID year did not get even a single day of MG Narega work, and those households did not get a single day of work were actually seeking close to 77 days of work on an average in a year. So why is this article important? The article points out two stories and technically two sides of the same coin. First side of the coin is that on the ground, MG Narega failed during the pandemic. On the other hand, it also shows a bright and optimistic story that yes, after the COVID-19 pandemic was gone or the first lockdown was taken away, MG Narega became very important in reviving people's income back, and people were able to revive their main source of income via MG Narega, and these vulnerable households at least got some government sponsored employment. So this topic is extremely important for government schemes. It's a cautionary tale with regards to how government schemes should also be able to take shock, and it's also an optimistic story on how MG Narega has now become a lifeline for a lot of people. With this, let's enter the last topic, which is India again abstaining in the UNGA resolution against Russia. The foreign minister has very clearly pointed out that India will take a very neutral stance with regard to Russia. He has been very blunt to say that when India needed arms, nobody gave it to us, but when the dictators of Pakistan needed it, they were getting it from the West itself. So when it comes to Russia, it's a country which is an all-weather friend for us, and it has always stood by India when it comes to any of the wars from 65 to 71. The basic point is that India is very clear in saying that we will not explicitly condemn the activities of Russia on a UN level organization. However, we are ready to be part of any form of de-escalation if it is through diplomacy. This is something for which India has been facing a lot of criticism also, which is that India has not explicitly criticized Russia, but we don't need, and we should be developing our independent foreign policy, which previously we've called the concept of all alignment. And Russia at this point of time is a problematic aspect in our foreign policy. However, we have now developed a very clear and neutral stance. We will not condemn the actions of Russia in the UN, which is based on our historical relationship with Russia itself. So India abstained in the UNGA on a draft resolution on the concept of Russia's illegal referendas or referendums in the annexed territories of Ukraine. We also discussed that previously in the CNA. So 193 members of the General Assembly actually voted on Wednesday to condemn Russia's illegal referendums in the regions within the internationally recognized territory of Ukraine and attempted to illegally annex the areas of Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk and Zaporozhye, which is technically the 4 regions which have been illegally occupied or have been invaded by Russia itself. Now this is something which has been brewing up for quite a long time. We have been talking about how the basic story is going to be that the referendums will be rigged and the regions will talk about going into Russia, and the UNGA chose to have a condemning resolution against it. But what is more important with regards to this topic is that how we need to perceive this crisis. The resolution, which says territorial integrity of Ukraine, defending the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, was adopted with 143 nations voting in favor, which is against Russia. Russia, Belarus, North Korea, Syria and Nicaragua voting against it, and India along with other 35 nations abstaining. Now the basic point is New Delhi is arguing that this is consistent with our understanding and our national position, that the country is ready to support any form of de-escalation, be it through peaceful solution or diplomacy. The basic point is India cannot abandon its friend at this point of time. Yes, there's a lot of criticism which India has faced for this stance. We believe this is the right stance itself. At the end of the day, the EU is talking about sanctions, but is actually based on Russian oil and gas. And I have myself shown you how much they're dependent on Russian gas and oil. Their inflation at this point in time is at a 10-year peak because of this. The basic point of the matter is that the US and the EU cannot dictate our foreign policy. We have developed an independent all alignment policy, and Russia has always stood by us, and Russia still stands by us, and it has been an all-weather friend for us, and India's stance in that regard is justified. And abstaining in this resolution is going to become another form of criticism India is going to face, but it is worth it because Russia has always been there for India and it has been an important ally for us in the long run. With this, let's try to understand what we've understood today. First, we've tried to understand the new generation launch vehicle by ISRO, the concept of cost efficiency plus reusability being introduced by ISRO. We also tried to understand the basic 4 generations of rockets which we used previously, and PSLV is the one which we want to replace. Second, we understood the concept of stubble burning, the major reason for the pollution in Delhi, and how pelletization and torrefaction are now seen as solutions for that. Thereafter, we moved to the concept of the Interpol, how the Interpol is an important organization, and the red notice, a very important and common form of notice issued by the Interpol against criminals or international criminals at this point of time. We also tried to understand what is the agenda with regards to the Delhi meeting which is happening for the General Assembly. It is important because there are countries which are protecting money launderers under the name of sovereignty. Then we moved to the second last topic, which was related to the NREGA scheme, the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, and the fact that how it worked after the pandemic in helping the income recovery of people. However, during the pandemic, it was a major failure. So at the same point of time, it was a problem. And with the last topic, we tried to understand how India again abstained from voting in the UNGA resolution against Russia, technically solidifying our conviction towards Russia and also reinforcing the fact that we will develop our foreign policy independently and not be dictated by the US and the EU. With this, let's look at the mains question. Pellet plants and torrefaction could be the answer to Delhi's pollution. Elucidate. So this is about the process of pelletization, torrefaction, how and why this is the solution. Then MG NREGA or MG National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme during and after the pandemic was both a failure and a success, critically analyzed. So you need to talk about how NREGA itself worked after the pandemic, but during the pandemic it was a major failure. With this, I would like to end the session. Thank you so much for your patience. I will see you in the next session. Take care. Bye bye.